you did something that was rather unique. You were, you know, a role model in the community and a Christian leader, pastor of a church. And back in those days, we had revival services. You know, was it a fall and a spring? Mm-hmm. It was kind of a tradition that was expected. So you planned the fall revival services and brought a preacher in and a song leader, and you know, it was kind of done that way then. You always tried to have them on Monday through Thursday night during the fall because I was playing football on Friday night for high school, and it turned out that the game got rescheduled for some reason. I don't remember, but we ended up having a game on Thursday night. And you told me that you just weren't going to be able to make it to the game. You were the preacher. You had to be at church. And so I understood that. That wasn't a big deal, you know. But you never missed a game. Mm-mm. Did you realize that?
Yeah.
I played for 11 years, 3 sports. Uh-huh. You never missed a game.
No.
That's pretty incredible. When I was the director of Eagle Rock Boys Ranch, I went to hundreds and hundreds of ball games. I remembered as I was going to all those games, many of which were very boring, many of which my kids weren't playing, but I remember what it felt like to see you in the stands, and I knew that these kids wanted to see somebody in the stands. And I drove all over this state going to ball games, and oftentimes the kids didn't even get to play. But every time after the game, they would want to know what I thought. And that was all because you were always at all my games. How did alcohol affect your family, do you think?
It was not good. It was not good at all. I saw fights between my dad and his brother. I saw fights between my dad and my mom. And to this day, I can't forget those.
It's embedded in your memory.
It is. It's implanted there. And I mean, I remember when I was a little fella, I probably wasn't 5 years old. I can still remember seeing my uncle come flying through our bedroom one night where my dad had hit him.
Wow.
And I'd already gone to bed, and they were drunk, and I don't know what was said or done. I just know I saw my uncle come flying through our bedroom, you know, hit the wall. And I saw my dad, and he did some things I wished he hadn't done with my mom. And that hurts. But it did. And as I got older, he did the last thing he ever did, because I told him. I was a grown man then. Mom got to the phone and she called me. And I came over. And I had to tell him, don't you ever, ever do this again. There'll be consequences. And I meant it. I meant it. And he didn't after that. But my dad got saved. At a young man, he wanted to be saved. His dad was rough. And his mom was rough. And therefore he became rough.
Wow.
He didn't know how to live. You know, he didn't have a model. The men he worked with were horrible. I mean, I worked with him. As an adult, I worked with him. And I saw how they lived and how they talked and the habits they had. You know, and his life was just a struggle. And I began to understand that. You know, he hadn't had a model.
Right.
But when he became a Christian, he changed. And he loved my mom. My mom was a cancer patient. And after Daddy got his life together, you couldn't have asked for a better model than what he did for her. He cared for her. Oh, he cared for her. He loved her so much. And he loved being my brother. And he loved serving God. He and Gordon Miller would go every week. I don't know if they went every day or not, but it was every week. They visited people at homes and hospitals, and he kept a little pad in his pocket, in his pencil. And he'd break that pad out, and he could tell you how everybody in that church was doing.
Wow.
And he was praying for them. And my dad prayed. He had a workshop away from the house, and he didn't pray at the house. My dad would go to his workshop, and he had a little stool. I got it. I still got it.
Yeah.
And he would get down on that stool, and he would pray.
Wow.
Man, would he pray. And when I needed him so much, he was there for me.
Wow.
Because my life came apart when I was my mid-20s. I mean, I hit rock bottom. And I moved back home with my parents, and they received me. No problem. They knew what had happened, and they loved me, and they took care of me, and I got back on my feet. God sent me a wonderful wife, and a family, and that's a whole nother story in itself. But I was so blessed. But my dad took care of me. My mom did. They were there for me in thick and thin.
Do you remember the first time your dad told you he loved you?
I can remember that I walked in his house and sat down with him and told him that I loved him. And he looked at me very strangely and said, well, son, and now you have to understand that was probably one of the first times I ever heard that word.
Son.
Son. I love you too.
Wow.
And I get emotional about it. But when you are 18 years old and you hadn't heard those words, it's quite an impact on your life. I did not want my children to grow up not knowing their father loved them with all his heart. And that's, I think, one of the most important factors in families today. Kids don't know because we don't tell them. And I did not want my kids to grow up and not hear that I loved them.
I became a father after between my senior year and freshman year. I didn't know at the time. I was getting ready for a basketball game, and I looked over, and a couple of my teammates were just kind of pointing at me and laughing. And I stopped getting dressed, and I looked at them and I said, what's wrong? What are you guys laughing about? And they said, yeah, you don't know? I said, no what? What are you, And then they said, they told me that I was going to be a dad. And I said, no way. I said, yeah. I said, how do you know? And I don't know. And so I went back and it was confirmed, that was the last game I played. I left that gym, and the next day I got a job. Wow. And I didn't go and tell the coach. I wasn't mature enough to know the proper way to exit. All I knew is that a child is on the way, and a child needs milk, a child needs diapers, a child needs clothes. And so I went and got a job, and turned out later there were twins. So what I've been doing my whole life, some of the things that you may admire or think, but I've been working hard to ensure that my children that were born while I was a young man and in college didn't suffer any lack because of my doing what I was doing. And then I've worked hard for my other two children so they wouldn't suffer a lack for what I've done. So be there for them. I think that even in spite of that, I went to court. I came home after my first football game, so it was Thanksgiving, and the police came to get me, and went to court. Never arrested me or anything, and so this was when I first saw God intervene in my life. So the judge says to the lawyer, says, "What is he doing?" And the lawyer said, "Well, he has a full ride scholarship to play college football." And he says, "Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease the child support payments so that the arrearage doesn't get so large that it overwhelms them, because it's best for those kids and this young man if he goes to college and gets that degree." And that's what I did. And I told the judge, I said, "You can put whatever you want on that paper." I said, because I have to eat. I have to have clothes. I know they have to have clothes. They have to eat, because I'm going to meet and exceed whatever you put on that paper.
What do you think he did that aside from just being there for you, what do you think he did that helped mold you into being the parent that you are today?
Let me fail. He let me fall on my face a couple of times. And that's, I would always go to him, and I still do today. I go to him and I'll run things past. I want to run something by you, Dad. And I'll tell him some things that, I'm thinking about. I've been in all kinds of businesses, and every one of them I've run to my dad about and talked to him. And some of those businesses have failed, and he's probably advised me probably not to do them, but he's let me fall on my face, and then he picks me up and he encourages me to keep going. I mean, from a very young kid, it's anything that I wanted to do. He's always said, if you want to do it, do the best you can and just attack it. Everything you do, attack it and just go as hard as you can. And I still hear him today, talking to me about things like that.
So he formed that part of your personality that said, "Hey, if you want a bear in your front yard, just go get it."
Exactly. He was, anything you want, if you want it, then work for it and get it.
So the year that, so as you can imagine, Eric and I are obviously Alabama fans. We love everybody. Jesus loves everybody, but we are Roll Tide.
But he loves Alabama more, right?
I did not say that.
Roll Tide.
So we're huge Alabama fans. And so the year that the dreaded, kick six, the dreaded year of that. And so at the time.
We might want to just relive that. Can we?
Yeah, no.
Can the producers find that tape and we'll just rerun that?
Yeah, no, let's please not relive that. So we would always be, at the time my mom lived in South Carolina, and so we would always be visiting her for Thanksgiving, and we would be there, and we would just always watch the game there. And so we had just finished watching the dreadful end to that game, and we're kind of just beside ourselves, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, man, I can't believe that. And, who could have seen that coming? And Eric was like, they never should have tried that field goal. They never should have done that. Yeah. And I thought, well, no one could have seen that coming. I mean, that was just who does that? And she just really made me mad, assuming and just almost acting like, well, someone should have expected someone to field that kick and run it back for a touchdown. Yeah. And I'm telling you, I did not yell. I didn't get belligerent, but I was pretty sharp-tongued just in telling her that she didn't understand about football and da-da-da-da-da, and I'm doing this in front of all the kids and what I mean. I was emotionally wrapped up in this. And so it was a few minutes later, and after I calmed down, then the Holy Spirit started speaking to me, and he started chastising me. And I had to that evening. I gathered all the kids together, and I gathered Erica together, and I had to apologize. And it was serious, I had to say, listen, football should not cause Dad to act like that, and a husband doesn't treat his wife like that over something as silly as a football game. And it was very, 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 very humbling. And it was very, very difficult, but it's good for our kids to see that we're human and that we make mistakes.
So coming from a dad, maybe you can look over here and just address. Maybe there's a dad out there that's not a dad. Maybe he's fathered a child and he's abandoned them. Your dad abandoned you.
Yes.
Could you just speak to that guy and tell him what it feels like to be abandoned?
I'm going to tell you, is the worst pain on the planet. And I was lucky I didn't get angry and attack the world. I took my pain and went within. A lot of young boys take their anger and they attack people. I'm going to say this to your dad that's not there. You don't have to be perfect, okay? Just be there. You don't have to have a lot of money. You don't have to have any money. Just be there. It doesn't take a whole lot, I've learned, to be a good father. Number one, be there. Number two, be there. And last, be there. So in order to be a good dad, be there. You haven't got to be the most intelligent person on the planet. You haven't got to be the smartest person. You haven't got to be the most handsome, the most money. Just be there.
So I wrote a chapter about you and your dad in one of my books, and the chapter is titled "Live to Forgive." Tell us about that process that you went through, and it was years later, I think, that you kind of came to grips with the fact that your dad was harsh, that y'all didn't have the greatest relationship, but you figured some things out. And I think there's a lot of young guys that, or maybe some older guys, that are working on that now. Can you tell us about that process and what you finally came to the conclusion?
Yeah, I think finding the card was a key thing, you know, even though, like I said, he was after he'd passed away, but still reading those words and knowing that they were from a time ago, you know, that had been probably 29, 28 years earlier. That was a key. I guess also looking back and thinking his love language was different, and I didn't take the time to find out what his was. I was telling Belinda, you know, even preparing to come in here earlier, I thought, you know, one of the things I guess I realized is that as much as him pushing me away, I pushed back, you know, because I didn't feel loved. I pushed back. And I think in one of the small groups that we help lead at church, the lesson that day, and I was helping lead it, was on words of affirmation of all things, or the power of words. And as I was preparing for it, I just felt like God prompted me and said, you know, it's time for you to quit being the victim or having that victim mentality, because you had as much in a part of pushing him away as he did. And I never really realized that. And as I got to thinking about it, I thought I didn't, you know, I didn't say I love you as much as he did. And I could have. And I guess, you know, looking back, I wish I would have just said every day or every time I talked to him, that no matter what the response was on his, that I would have said, I love you, Dad. And I did some, but I didn't go out of my way, because I guess I thought, you're not going to say it, I'm not going to say it, you know.
And I think that's a case with a lot of dads, particularly kind of the bravado, you know, the macho kind of dads. Is, you know, you don't get affectionate with your son. You don't say I love you to your son. You raise them to be tough, big men. And I think we dads need to remember that our you can do both. You can raise a tough young man, and you can also show some weaknesses if you need to. And you can show some affection and speak their love language, so to speak. So I think that's a great message.
And I remember I was speaking at a camp in Idaho. He lived in right outside of Boise at that time, outside of Twin Falls. I spoke at a camp out there, and I remember it was just me and my parents. We were sitting down at lunch. They were taking me to the airport. I had been in ministry for several years at this point. And I remember he told me something. He said to me, he just started talking about my life, and as he saw me, and he said, son, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. And they dropped me off, and I'm at the airport, and I'm like jacked up, you know what I mean? Because I was like, I shouldn't be struggling with this, you know what I mean? Like, I needed to hear that, you know? I'm like, I'm too old for this. Like,
you're a grown man.
I was like, you know, late 20s, and I needed to hear that. So I think for me now, like that's one thing I do with my kids is I tell them, hey, no matter what you do, I don't care how you're gonna screw up. I tell our kids like you're gonna screw up. We will always love you, and we're proud of you, and we try to praise them. And I think that's something. I don't think he tried to keep it away, but he wasn't good at giving it.
Yeah, so I think there's a message there because, you know, at Eagle Rock Boys Ranch when I was there were a lot of kids that felt like their dad didn't like them.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a different, you know, you can feel loved and not liked.
Yeah.
Kids want to be liked by their dads too. You know, they want to know that their dad genuinely thinks that they're cool.
Yeah.
You know, to put it in teenage words. So, Alberto, there's a phrase that comes to mind when I think of you because we used to watch a lot of ball games together.
Yeah.
And your famous phrase was, "You can do it."
You can do it. That's right. That's
you
right.
Can do it.
Yeah.
And you everybody at the school knew that when somebody said, "You can do it,"
you can do it.
That was Alberto Echeverri.
That's right.
So I think it's fitting that we close our time by maybe you look in the camera again.
Okay.
And speak to that young man's out there where you were 35 years ago.
Okay.
And tell him you can do it. You can become a great father.
That's right. You can do it. You can be a great father. You can be a role model. You can ask God for the wisdom that you can be the best you can be, and nothing is impossible without God. With God, nothing is impossible with God, and that's just every time you have a think or question about it, just remember that you can do it, and we can cross any obstacles that we can have had in the past. We can cross those obstacles and be successful at the end.
You can do it.
You can do it. That's right.
I'm just curious about something. And when you were growing up, Zach, how often, you have two sisters, younger sisters, how often did y'all sit down at the dinner table together as a family?
We were at the dinner table every night.
Every night?
We were at the dinner table every night. We weren't missing me and my sisters all played sports in high school, and sometimes we were all going in different directions, but it still feels like we were at dinner together every single night. You know, if somebody had to work late, if somebody had something going on, it was like, put it down, come eat, you can handle it afterwards. And I mean, we had times where we were like just dog tired, but we have pictures on Facebook of me asleep at the dinner table, just sitting there because Mama was like still prepping dinner, and I was just so worn out from the day, I just fell asleep waiting on her. So, I mean, we would have nights where we were all just so tired and worn out. We were quiet, but we were together.
You know, I think that every strong family, the one piece of furniture that should have the most sentimental value should be the dinner table. I know when I retired, we had to move off the ranch and then into another house. And the one piece of furniture that I made sure we kept, even in spite of the fact that Deanna wanted a new table, we refinished that old table because it's such a symbol of our family from the time that my kids were in high chairs until they came and had dinner after their college graduation.
I was thinking today, just because I knew we would be talking about Dad and about his impact on my life, and there were several things that came to my mind, and it was this: my dad was strength for me. He was that, and still is today. He's still with me, and I thank the Lord he's still with me. He's always been that constant in my life. He is a man of integrity, a man of character, and my dad is one of those kind of guys, and there's an old saying that I remember that you don't hear about much anymore, and that saying is this, is that a man is he's as good as his word. That if he tells you something, he's going to do it. Well, that's my dad. If he told me something, that's what he did, and still to this day. And he has made such an impact on me all my life, and I feel like he taught me how to be a man, and he taught me how to be a father. And I haven't always gotten it right, but I've tried to be the best dad I could be. But I learned many of the things from him.
Anything that you can think of particularly that he might have done that kind of sticks out in your mind in that regard?
Well, yes, so there's a lot of things I guess I could share with you, but one particular thing I wanted to share with you is something is what you was just talking about. And you're talking about preachers' kids. You'd be amazed at how many preachers' kids actually struggle because of difficulties that they face, or their fathers have faced, their families have faced, that bleeds over into their homes. But my dad, he one thing he taught me, and I feel like it has to do with integrity, has to do with so many different things, is that for me was to always be there with his family, no matter what the situation of the need might be. And there's one particular thing that sticks out in my mind. I've told this story so many times about my dad, and he had a very busy schedule. He was always on the road. He was always going, and my dad did a little different than some. He stayed at home. He drove back and forth from home to all of his preaching engagements. And one particular day, I was a young boy, and back behind our house, we had and they still have today, a pond. And I had been wanting to go fishing, and I had been talking to Dad about it. Like I said, I was younger and wasn't quite old enough to go by myself. And one particular day, I remember I came in from school. I'd been wanting to go, and Dad was already dressed to go preach that night. Had a suit and tie on. He was ready to go, getting ready to leave. And I come in. I'd said something about it. Well, I looked around and didn't see Dad anymore. Here in just a few moments, I saw him come out of his bedroom. He went back to his bedroom. He took his suit and tie off, took all of that off, put on fishing clothes, went and grabbed the fishing pole, the tackle box, went out to that pond. He fished with me for probably about 20 minutes, maybe 20, 25 minutes. Didn't have long. We got finished. He went back to the house. He put it down, went right back to that room, put his suit back on, jumped in his car, took off. And that has stayed in my mind all my life. That made such an impression on me, because it made me realize no matter how busy he was, no matter what his schedule was, nothing was more important than me in that moment. And that's something that I've had to learn as time goes on, that our families, even though we're in ministry and we're doing the work of the Lord and we're doing what God's called us to do, our families are outside of God. They're the most important thing in our life.
So I'm wrapping my hand around his yellow T-shirt. You can imagine what's all in that shirt. And I lift him up, and I get him on the floor, and I have to balance him as he walked to go to the bathroom. He's holding up on the wall, and I give him some privacy, and he calls me back, and I wrap my hand around his shirt again, and I begin to pull him and help him balance. I get him back and lay him in the bed. And he's in that bed, and I get him his feet up on the bed, and I pull a stool up, and I sit on it. So I got to ask you, Daddy, I got to ask you something. He said, what, son? Why are you doing this? Why are you destroying our family? Why are you beating my mother till she falls out on the floor? Little 5'2" lady. Here you are, the big man that you are. 3 carloads of police arrest you, tearing our house apart. He's tore our house up many times. And we had to run, sleep on park benches, in the back of cars, wherever we could till we could get a place to stay. Why? He looked at me, guys, that day. Scott, he looked at me and he said, son, I'm just trying to escape. And I said, what do you mean? He said, son, if I get drunk enough, if I can get high enough, I don't have to think about reality. I don't have to think about the things been done to me or the things that I've done to others.
Well, in the process of me having that conversation with my aunt, I did have a lot of resentment, and she she told me, she said, son, she says, I see that on you. And she says, but you gotta forgive. You gotta release it. You gotta let that go, because you didn't have no choosing in the choices that your father and your mother made. And in the process of it, she told me, she said, it's doing more hurt, it's doing more harm, it's doing more damage to you than it is doing to them, because I was just a person that was reaping something that I really didn't know anything about and everything. But I'm so thankful that she saw it, because it helped me to release it and to go on farther in life at this present time where I am today. Mm-hmm. And I'm very thankful that even in the process of being home at that time period, because I did injure my shoulder when I was playing football at North Alabama, it began to cause me to even to yearn even the more wanting to have a relationship the more with my father. And then in the process of him being in an accident, I began to have an opportunity to be around him a little bit more than I did in the previous life, until I was a little bit over 20-something years old.
Yes, tell us about that accident that your dad was in.
My dad was in a car. He was in a car accident. He was walking across the road in a Taller, and a car hit him. Yeah. And he wound up being in the nursing home for a period of time to recover from the accident he had been in and everything. And during the process of him being in that car wreck and everything, it created an opportunity for me to get to know him a little bit better than I had known him in previous years.
Yeah, your dad eventually passed away. I don't think, did he ever get out of the nursing home?
No, he never did. He never did get out of the nursing home and everything. And at that time period when he got hit by the car and everything. But during the process before my father passed away and everything, Maurice Wright and I was in Decatur, Alabama, and I got a telephone call letting me know that my father had passed away and everything. And before I received that call, one of the greatest things that I give God praise and glory and honor for to this day is that during the process of my father being in the nursing home from being in that car wreck and everything before he deceased, I'm so thankful for this, that my grandfather, who was my dad's father, and my uncle Preston Nix, we was all three there together. The Lord gave us an opportunity to lead him into the sinner's prayer.
Wow.
And that's special to me. That's the greatest gift any man can receive, is the gift of repentance. And that was awesome. That was special to me, even though my father never gave me naturally any presents or any gifts, but for our Heavenly Father to come down and give my dad a gift. And I had an opportunity to be there to see him receive that gift of eternal life with Jesus Christ. That was the greatest gift that could be given to me.
You know, we had we lived in a trailer growing up, and my dad had built an extra room on that trailer, and he actually built a basement to go with it to expand and have more room. And so I had my training facility, if you will, down in the basement. Well, we had an old oil furnace, and as back in the days, you would call an oil furnace truck, and they'd come out and fill your tank up, and then, you know, that fuel would be what was used to supply the oil furnace in the trailer. Well, my dad was a self-starter. He didn't believe in calling somebody. He wanted to work on it himself, and we were having problems with that furnace, and it was during the wintertime. And my dad was home. We lived so far out, you know, there was no – if your house caught fire, forget it. There's no fire truck going to show up. Had no fire department. So sure enough, my dad got to working on that oil furnace, and something happened, and the igniter, some way, a fuel line ruptured, and the fuel went everywhere, and then the fire was small, and then it started, and my dad was trying to put the fire out, and we didn't have insurance. So he's trying to put this fire out, and it got out of control. And I remember at the elementary school, actually, we lived about 2 miles from the elementary school where I went. I remember being outside on the playground and seeing smoke go up in the air from the playground I was playing on, and it was in the direction of our house. Little did I know that my dad was battling a full-blown blaze that was going to take our whole, going to take everything. I was in the 8th grade back then. It was going to actually destroy everything he'd built, and my dad, of course, he realized I'm not going to be able to put this fire out, so I'm just going to start carrying out everything I can carry out. And obviously, in a fire, the first thing you're going to go for is you're going to go for your pictures, So he went and got all of our family pictures he could get before, it got too bad. But the second thing he went and got was my weights, Actually went down into a basement, and it was on fire up above, And he knew those weights, he knew those weights had importance, to me, and the relationship he and I had was kind of built around athletics, And so, we didn't have the money to go buy a bunch of equipment, and he, worked real hard, had extra money just to buy that set of weightlifting equipment. He went down in there and carried all that out, and they had it outside, and we lost everything, and but my dad actually, when I saw that, I said, man, my dad really, risked his own life just to get, you might look at that today and think, man, what a crazy person, but my dad knew the importance of it, with respect to our relationship, and it was just a material thing, but I couldn't have got weights again, So
he ran into a burning house.
Yeah.
Into the basement of it could have fallen in.
Could have been bad
on him.
And so, that type of thing is what I grew up around, watching my dad basically lay down his priorities, his life, and his goals, to help his kids, be everything they could be in Christ,
And as a grown man now, that probably means you realize the significance of that.
Yeah,
more than you might have when you were in that grade.
I mean, obviously, I didn't know anything. A power team didn't even exist when I was growing up, You just don't know these small things, how God's going to use that. And years later, I'm on the power team and evangelizing and leading people to Christ. Well, at the time, what seemed insignificant, like it don't really matter. Let those things burn up. Little did I know that was going to be the thing that God used to help me, reach the lost.